So what I'm wearing right now isn't really that good of camouflage. Depends on where I am. So earlier, whenever I was speaking with a class, I was sitting outside and I had a brick building around me. And so a pattern like this might actually blend in with the camouflage of that area. But whenever you think about camouflage, you're probably thinking something like this. And yeah, in the woods or in the forest, that would blend in a lot better. But let's go ahead and get into animal camouflage, or how different animals camouflage themselves. So like I was saying, animals can camouflage themselves in a variety of different ways. You may have seen a gray squirrel. Whenever they're out in the open on the grass, they don't blend in, but whenever they're up in the trees, they blend in pretty well. Same thing with owls. Owls are absolutely amazing at blending in with the surroundings because they're a predator. They gotta prey on other animals. You also may see some leaf-tailed geckos. They're not normally in Florida, but some people have them as pets, and they blend in super well. Like you can see this guy's face and his eyes, but his hand just disappears. It's in the picture, but you just can't even see it. But animals can camouflage themselves in a variety of different ways. So the first type of way we're gonna talk about is mimicry. Mimicry is faking being something else. So an example of this would be like a walking stick. So the picture in the bottom right here is of a stick bug or walking stick, and they look like a tree branch. Other examples is the oak leaf butterfly, which is the top right there. And you can see the butterfly where it's at right now doesn't blend in too well, but if he was to go on a branch that has dead leaves, he'd blend in perfectly. Some other examples would be a leaf lizard or a leaf gecko. They blend in pretty well to their surroundings, as well as this butterfly who blends into the bark of the trees. But they're mimicking something else. Whenever you think about camouflage, the first thing you probably think about is octopus, or at least that's what I thought about whenever I was a kid. And sort of they could change colors depending on where they are. Another example of this is with the chameleon. They're absolutely changing the color of their body depending on where they are, either as an octopus trying to blend in with coral, or with a chameleon to try and blend in with the branches or the leaves around them. But a type of active camouflage, or camouflage that changes you may not have thought about, is with the snow hare. So a snow hare can change what color its fur is depending on the type of year it is. So during the summertime, whenever there's no snow on the ground, or there's less snow on the ground, their back turns like a grayish brown color to blend in with the rocks around them. But during the summer or during the winter time, they're fully snow colored or white to blend in with all the snow around them. This keeps them hidden away from all the wolves or coyotes that are trying to attack them. Another type of camouflage is self-decoration. If you go down to the river or to a pond, you may see turtles who have algae growing on their back, and that's on purpose. They're trying to go and blend into that mucky water. So they'll have all the leaves and, in this case, duckweed on their back. So they can blend in really well so that things don't attack them. Or if they're trying to catch a fish, they blend in so the fish don't see them. But one of the coolest examples is with the decorator crab. And he'll, with his little claws, will put different rocks or sand on its back to make them blend in to the sand or wherever it's at, really. What's cool about this is, depending on where this crab is, it can use the sand from that area to blend in even better. So rather than having, excuse me, rather than having some generic camo that can't change, they can take whatever's in that area as camouflage, which is pretty smart. The next was for disruptive coloration, where basically, let me go ahead and give an example of this first. So let me stand up. Okay, we take my background off. I want to give an example before anything else. Here. Give me a second. Filters. All right, so some animals we know don't see in color. We see in color, but other animals see in different ways. They can see ultraviolet light, or maybe they just see in black and white. So on this bluish gray wall, my pattern doesn't blend in. But if I was to take off this shirt and put on just a gray shirt, we'll go and use it for example. If my entire outline was this, then I'd put them to the wall. So that's disruptive camouflage. Right now you can see my outline, but if I was just wearing a gray shirt, you can't tell where my shirt starts and the wall begins, or the surroundings begin. So now if we go back to the animals, you can have these frogs that are up top where they have blotches on their skin so that they can't tell, or animals around them can't tell, well, that's where the frog starts and that's where the branch begins, where they can blend it with mud. Another example is with sea turtles, where their back kind of looks like shadows of the sparkling water. If you ever look into water, you can see there's all those shadows on the bottom. Their outline is kind of disrupted by those different colors. But the best example of all is with a tiger. So tigers usually live in a jungle or in like a grassland area. And all these black stripes down the side of a tiger kind of look like shadows off of that grass. And so whenever a tiger's crawling through or walking through the grassland, an animal they're trying to prey on or predate on can't tell where the tiger starts and where it's just grassland. It's a pretty good camouflage for where they are. The last type of camouflage I want to talk about is color match, where they're pretty much just a solid color, like a deer, where they don't have much coloration to them, but because of where they are, that color fits in really well. So we have the deer, you maybe have a hedgehog or a groundhog, or crickets or grasshoppers. Again, they're fully one color, but because where they live, that blends in extremely well. All right, that's all I had. So now if you have any questions, now it's time to ask. Either in chat or unmute yourself, we can go that way. Ms. Blinn, you have a question?
Yes, we did a little activity, the old butterfly on the newspaper one. Have you heard of that one? Well, we did that, and the kids weren't fooled as much as I thought they would be. And then I was thinking, why aren't we camouflaged? Why are some animals camouflaged and others aren't?
Well, if you think about like other primates, so if you go and like group animals together, we're with the same category as monkeys and apes, and they're not camouflaged where they are. And it's because we use other tools to get our job done. So humans will create a spear, or we'll go to the grocery store now, where camouflage hasn't been important to us for thousands and thousands of years. If you think about it in the case of monkeys, they'll eat seeds or bananas, where again, they're not trying to attack anything that's gonna move on them. And a banana, it's gonna stay in a banana spot. Versus if we're a panther has to crawl through a grassy area and try to blend in so the deer doesn't see where they are. All right, Ms. Boutwell, what fish are poisonous? There's hundreds, if not thousands of fish that are poisonous, so I couldn't name all of them, but some examples of them for would be like some puffer fish have some poison inside of them. There's also venom whenever it comes to certain types of fish, like lionfish. They have spines on their back that imagine all of my fingers are the spines. If a fish was trying to jump down or bite down on them, all those spines are going to go in that fish's mouth and inject venom into that fish's mouth, either killing them or just scaring them away. How many animal species can camouflage? I would say 80% of the animals on Earth camouflage in some sort of way, either so they don't get eaten or so that they can eat other things. Very few things don't have a need for camouflage. Talking about certain animals who, some of them do camouflage and some of them don't, I would talk about birds, for example. So male birds are super brightly colored majority of the time, while female birds are usually dully colored or not as bright. An example of this is like the cardinal. A female cardinal just sits on the nest and protects the nest. And so they'll sit up on the nest and blend in with the tree, while the male cardinal is flying all around. He has no need to camouflage because he can fly around a lot better. All right, let's see what's next. Why do animals have different kinds of eyes? So for us, being able to identify an animal or identifying what we're looking at is very important. So a ripe banana is more appealing to our belly than a really disgusting banana, like a brown banana. So us being able to see colors is important. This is also important for if we're trying to hunt. If we see that deer walking through the woods, we need to like have a good eyesight on it so we can throw an arrow at it or whatever we're trying to do. While other animals like butterflies or beetles, they need to see pollen and nectar and those sorts of things. And so they have like ultraviolet eyes that can see that nectar extremely well. They can see things that we can't see. So that's part of why animals have different eyes. What does an alligator camouflage best with? So alligators are usually darkly colored, and that blends in really well with muddy, murky water. They can sneak through that water or that mud really well. And so if you ever see an alligator underwater, usually they're crawling across the bottom of the water because their back looks like mud. And so things above it can't see them, and things face to face with them think it's mud. Why don't all animals see color? That kind of goes back to what's important to them. If they need to see ultraviolet things, like a scorpion sees ultraviolet or a butterfly sees ultraviolet, it's because that's what's important to them. Their nectar is important to them versus for us. How can animals change their color to camouflage in seasons? Depends on what kind of hair they're growing, for an example of that. So we go back to that that snowshoe hair. It needs to blend in with snow in the wintertime whenever there's snow, and it needs to blend in with rocks whenever there's not snow. I have a pure white, if we had a pure white bunny outside right now in Florida, what is it gonna blend into? There's no snow on the ground, there's nothing white on the ground. We need dark brown colored bunnies if we're sticking to that. How can chameleons change on command? This gets very, very technical, but basically chemical reactions on the cellular level. So there's thousands of cells on my finger, that's how small it is. There's chemical reactions going on that small of a level that can change the color. So depending on what color is around them, they'll try to use that color for the chemical reaction. What color do animals change whenever they die? If it's a color changing animal, usually goes to, that's a really interesting question. If the color changing animal like a chameleon or an octopus, usually a dull gray because there's no chemicals going on. It just goes to whatever their natural color is. But if it's an animal with fur or hair, that hair's not changing colors. So until that fur rots away, which is kind of gross, it'll stick to whatever color it is. So a deer, it can be left outside for days or months and stick to that tan color. Do pet cats camouflage? So we breed cats for certain colors. So it's kind of beyond being camouflaged at this point. If you have a black cat, it's been bred to be a black cat. But it's funny you mentioned that because I was outside doing a Zoom earlier and I had a black cat walking through my backyard through some tall grass, and 30 seconds later I saw it come back with a squirrel. And so even though it doesn't blend in as well, it can still hide fairly well. By the way it walks, it'll crouch down and its arms will not go very high, so it can crouch down and sneak on squirrels pretty well. Just one example. How many ways are there to hide as an animal, and what are those ways, or at least some ways? So one way is all the different ways of camouflage. That's definitely one way. It's also how they walk. So for an example is foxes, whenever they're walking through snow or any thick mud where they would leave a lot of scent behind, they'll walk wherever one track was. So let's put it on the table. If this left foot goes here, my back left foot is going to go in that exact same spot so that they're not leaving many traces behind. They're leaving very little trace. So their smell isn't seen and their tracks aren't seen as well. So that's another way. Also just crouching down and using your environment to your advantage. So if you think about a cheetah as it's going through the savanna, it's keeping its body very crouched down so that its back isn't seen above the branch line or the grass line. There's plenty of different ways. Miss Rose, you said you had 2 questions. Do you want to mute yourself for those questions? Or are they written? I haven't gone down far enough.
We can unmute. That'd be awesome.
Okay, go ahead.
Eachin, ask your question.
Are tree vipers called tree vipers because they blend in with trees?
Yes, I don't know if you were here for the last time I talked about tree vipers or other tree snakes, but yes, they blend in with trees really well, either making their body look like a tree branch or just staying super still in the tree branch where nothing ever sees them. But yes, that's why.
Okay, one more. Savannah?
Can geckos change color?
There may be some geckos that can change color, but the geckos we have here in Florida, most of the time they're just one color. So the most common gecko we have is like a dull gray color with black splotches in it. And that blends in really well with pine needles. The shade from the pine needles blends in really well with geckos. So that's what we'll mostly see. But there may be some geckos that can change color. I don't know everything about that. Can other animals change colors? I'm sure there's other animals that can change colors. Like to the level that chameleons and octopus do, there's not very many that can do that. I'm sure there's some that I'm forgetting. But on the minor level, some fish, like if you've ever seen like a saltwater fish tank, there's a fish called a fox face. Whenever they're super happy and trying to impress other fish, they'll be super bright yellow. But if they're scared, they'll turn their entire body into a black, blotchy like mess to try to blend in with a rock. So that's just one example of hundreds that I can think of. Can animals see germs? I'm sure some animals can go and see some bacteria, and that's what you're thinking about with germs and some bacteria. But big animals like us or other mammals, not so much. How many different species change colors? I kind of talked about that. There's hundreds, if not thousands, that can, or hundreds that'll probably change colors mildly, probably 10 or so that can change colors to the level a chameleon can. How does zebras camouflage in grass? So they're part of the disruptive camouflage part where this black and white can kind of like change the way we view a zebra. Like we may think that the zebra ends on the white, but there's actually a black section after that. And if they're seen in black and white, like another animal seen in black and white, if we go back to this, if the black ends here, they might not see that there's a white after it. Just using things around me. But it's disruptive camos where that fits in. That tall grass can block some of them. How well do chameleons see? So chameleons, whenever I look to the left or to the right, both my eyes follow that direction. Chameleons can change directions, so they can watch multiple different directions. They also see fairly similar to us, kind of on that gray scale a little bit. Can koalas camouflage? Where koalas live, the bark of that area, the trees of that area are kind of koala colored. Or if you go the opposite way, koalas blend in with those trees really well. Yeah. How many different species see color? I would say majority of animals see color in some sort of way. They might be able to see more in the ultraviolet way or more in the infrared way. So if we think about light as like a spectrum almost of like red, orange, yellow, then some animals can see more in one way and some animals can see more the other way. Animals camouflage whenever they sleep. That's part of it, is you will never see a squirrel sleeping on the ground. It'll go up in a tree to sleep because it blends in there. If a squirrel slept on the ground, it would just be like prime bait for every snake that went by. When animals camouflage, should they feel it or does it hurt? There is nothing that we don't believe one bit that it would hurt them at all. It's just, do you think about walking? Do you think about like chewing? Like those are just things that you do that are just natural to you. Changing color, they probably don't even think about it. They probably just do it without thinking about it. Do piranhas camouflage to catch their prey? From what I remember, the last time I saw a piranha, they're pretty darkly colored, and where piranhas live is in the Amazon rainforest, and the water there is super murky, black almost, and so piranhas blend in super well into water. And they're also super narrow for a fish. So if a fish is looking dead on at the piranha, then they don't even see it there, it blends in. It'd be like a piece of paper, like super, super thin. You can see this a lot less than you can see this. Let's see, do some animals turn into a color or design, make them less appetizing for predators? The first example I think about with this is certain butterflies will have a design on them that looks like eyes of a bigger predator. Caterpillars do it too, where their butt will look like eyes, so that animal can't tell which way's the head. Or in the butterfly example, if it has big eyes, they might think that's an owl looking at that animal versus just a butterfly back. So less on being unappetizing or not, yeah, it's less on that, but being more of looking like something else that's not. Mimicry. Are cats colorblind? I believe cats can see like us. They're predators where they want to prey on other things, so they can see pretty well. I don't know if they can see full color like us, but it'd be really hard to track that. Do alligators see in swamp dirty water? They can see about as good as we can on that, maybe a little bit better than us, but that's also why alligators will put their eyes above water so they can see something farther away. They can look above the water, see how far away something is, go underwater to keep walking. How do large animals like gorillas camouflage? If I remember right, gorillas mainly eat plants. So they don't need to camouflage too well, but how they do camouflage is by staying up in the canopy. So the canopy of trees, if you look up at a canopy, it looks dark black to you. And so if a gorilla's up there or up on a hillside, it would just blend into that blackness. That's more appropriate to say with monkeys. Monkeys crawl around in the trees, and so they blend in really well. The alligators walk, alligators do walk. On land, they can walk pretty fast, but underwater, they use that tail as a swimming mechanism too. So they can walk underwater and swim underwater. I answered your question as you put it in. Good job. Any other questions? All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for joining me today. I had an absolute blast. I hope you have a great holidays and see you back in the new year. Bye.